first round with the new flexed arrows. Didn't shoot too bad actually. Last shot kind of checked my level and then wasn't quite on where I wanted it, but that's not too bad. I like how they fly so far, so it's only 20 yards, but I'm going to shoot this for probably the majority of this morning, and then I'll start moving up. But this is a local range here. Goes out to 80. I couldn't shoot it like at all last year because they shut it down pretty quickly. This is where I usually shoot outside, kind of towards this time of the year, and yeah, I'm so happy to be back and not shooting too bad. So hopefully the rest of the day, the rest of the morning goes well. Alright, let's look at it. So this is my third round. Second round, I was making sure my anchor and everything was correct again. Third round was not too bad. Let's take a look. Not ideal, but not bad. I like these vanes a lot compared to the Blazers. Alright, so I made this switch over to Easton again, and some people are probably wondering why, especially with the reputation that Valkyrie has, so I'm going to explain it for a second. So basically, hopefully this works. Probably not gonna work. So basically, I like the Valkyrie arrows for the most part, and for the most part, they flew pretty well. Especially field tips, they flew pretty good. But, and I don't know, a lot of people probably say it's gonna be my bow or bow tune, which, you know, it could be, I guess, but right before season last year, I actually had my bow tuned. So yeah, right before season last year, I had my bow tuned, and it was right before I got my full set of arrows. And I wasn't shooting here, I was shooting up at kind of by the zoo. There's a range out there, shooting at my own target, whatever. And basically, from what I was experiencing was, I'd be consistent with field tips pretty much all the way out to 60. 60 was, you know, I was getting about a 4-inch group, which isn't terrible, but not optimal for me. And then I threw the broadheads on, so I was using the Valkyrie Jagger 200 grain. I was using 200 grain field tip and broadhead. And what I was finding was beyond 40 yards, so 50 yards and 60 yards, I could not get the arrows to fly consistent. Like, I can get one shot, it'd be dead nuts on. The second shot would be a little off, but still close, you know, acceptable in my eyes. And then the third shot would just be wild. And I tried just about everything. I had my bow gone over. I didn't have it retuned, but I did have it looked over. Everything was fine. I readjusted my sight for the broadhead several times, and I just couldn't figure it out. So, and then the other thing is, because of that, I ended up losing like 3 arrows, which part of the game, par for the course, to lose some arrows. But the problem for me is that um, they're not cheap arrows, and I had Valkyrie make the arrows for me, and then I also had the broadheads, so I lost 3 broadheads, and it's, you know, $125 for 3 broadheads, which, you know, a lot of the broadheads that are that quality are up there. Not knocking their product at all, as far as, you know, quality and all that, but it was just financially hard for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna go buy another half a dozen arrows at, you know, X amount of money, and another box of broadheads for $125 right before season. Luckily, I had enough. I had 5 arrows, all brand new broadheads, 5 arrows all set to go. And I didn't end up even shooting anything or shooting at anything. I never got the chance this last year, but that's besides the point. So this year, I started shooting the Valkyries again. I was really concerned about the broadhead thing. It's really expensive. I'm like the average person out here. I don't have a ton of money to blow on all of the new technical gear, which no offense to those guys. I love it. I love watching those videos and testing and all that. So I appreciate that. So what I did was I knew I could shoot the Eastons really well. They were really consistent beforehand. Never had a problem with them. So I was like, well, I'll buy those again. So what I did is, what I wanted was their new long range arrows. Hopefully you can read that. Alright, so Easton makes a new, it's called the long range, and it's I think a 4mm shaft, much like the Valkyrie. I think I have one. Okay, I do not have one prepared, but this is a 5mm shaft. So basically what I did was, I liked how much penetration I got with the Valkyrie. On the Valkyrie itself, I had the outsert to give me a little more front end weight. So I had Archery World here in Troutdale built these arrows for me. So basically it's a 50 grain outsert, typical 125 is what I shoot before, with the Axis 340 Easton Arrow. And then I really liked how Valkyrie used these vanes. For some reason I feel like they're quieter than the Blazers, and I've always shot Blazers for as long as I can remember, when they first went into the 2-inch fletching. So I was like, well, I want to try to stick with those. So went out and got some fletchings. I have that Arizona Easy Fletcher, and fletched these up myself. I did the wrap. I'm a believer in the wraps, just because I've shot enough times where, yes, you know, you lose an arrow, it really don't matter, you lose it, but every once in a while the wraps kind of help. Plus I've shot a couple deer with wraps, and you can kind of see the color of the blood. Some people might use that as a tool, I don't know, but I like the wrap, so I wrapped it. So anyway, basically when I came back down to it is financially it didn't make sense to me to keep shooting the Valkyrie arrows. Thinking back now, I kind of questioned the Valkyrie arrows I was using was 4 fletch, and I was using a 3-blade broadhead. It might be superstitious, but I think the way I tried to line up the fletching, so I tuned my broadheads to the arrow, so I tune it to the fletching. And if you don't know what that means, basically, say you have a 3-blade, you know, broadhead, and you have 3 fletchings at the back of the arrow. You want to line that up so it's straight on, not off, you know, not backwards, whatever. To me, I think they fly better that way. Some people might not think that, but I do. And so I had a 3-blade with a 4 fletch, and for some reason, I think what was going on ultimately was partially maybe the bow, the way it's set up. I have a kind of a short draw length, and I'm shooting 65 pounds. so maybe it just wasn't shooting fast enough to maintain a good arrow flight past 40, 50, yards. But I think for some reason the combination of those two made the shots just not consistent. And for me, I don't care at 50 yards if I'm like this, dead nuts in, but I want to be pretty well close and consistent, especially shooting at, elk and whatever, on where I hunt on the Oregon coast. You don't always get a big open shot, so I personally wanted something real consistent. So I went back to the Eastons, which, I knew they flew good, and I wanted something that I can rely on, and they're not that expensive. I had these made, if you don't count fleshing, because I did buy them pre-fleshed, and I just, cut it off and redid it. But if you don't count that, these are $90 basically for 6 arrows, whereas I'd spend that much just for 3 arrows, almost that much just for 3 arrows from Valkyrie, which, again, no offense to them guys, they're great arrows, I like them. It just wasn't working for me, so I kind of went with a little cheaper. I talked to a lot of people actually about different arrows, and almost everyone said, if you're not going to go with this brand that I shoot, go with Easton Arrows again. And I was like, okay. I had, I think, 5 different individuals tell me just to go back to the Axis. A couple people said do the FMJs, which I kind of was going towards that, but a few people steered me out of that, just for little reasons. And it all, again, came down to consistency. And the next thing that I changed up was the broadhead. Obviously, Valkyrie had their own broadheads, and they used to be made specific to their arrows, from my understanding. They just recently released one that you can screw onto like this arrow, but that was a little too late for me. So I went with the Quad Exodus. I've heard nothing but great things about these broadheads, and I've always shot a 3-blade. I've shot 2-blade a long time ago, back in the day, and I didn't have good luck with it. I actually lost a deer with a Magnus 2-blade broadhead, so I switched to the 3-blade. So this year, I'm going with the Quad Exodus 125. I have not shot it yet. I don't have my broadhead target with me, so I can't shoot it today, but yeah, I'm really excited, and I've heard these fly super consistent and like field tips, and that's above everything. I want accuracy and consistency. My bow is not the fastest, and so I gotta rely on that accuracy. Penetration's great. I thought I'd lose quite a bit with this arrow, the way it's built, but I actually weighed them out, and this combination weighs within a grain or two of my Valkyries, and I did my best to do the FOC calculation, and I believe I'm right at like 16%, and the Valkyrie was like 19 or right over 19%. So I feel like this is a better FOC. It's technically, I think, a stiffer spline, and it weighs about the same. So it should shoot roughly about the same speed as the Valkyrie, which they shot 256 and to 260 something, I think. I'll have to double check, but anyways, that's why I switched over back to the Easton Arrows. I don't know if anybody gets any use out of that, but I figured I'd explain it. Thanks, guys. And dial, last round of the morning, and I'll take it like that.